Imagine this situation. There are three friends, Ross, Joey and Chandler, sitting beside a swimming pool watching others swimming in that pool. None of them know how to swim. And while watching others swimming in that pool, these three friends are thinking in three different ways in their mind. The first one, Ross is thinking like, "Oh wow, how they are doing it. I mean, it must be a very difficult task. How can they float in the water with their heavy bodies? I don't think I can do it." And till his death, Ross never ever tries to swim. The second one, Joey is thinking like, "Oh, what's the big deal? I mean, I can do that also if I want to. I just need to move my hands and legs in a certain manner and that's it." And after considering swimming an easy task, he gets up and jumps into the swimming pool right at that moment. Do I need to tell the rest of the story? Then the lifeguards save him from sinking in water. These are the example of two extreme paths on which 90% of us are working. And that's why 90% of us are unsuccessful. First, the path of thinking without action, also called the path of fear. This path makes a human being paralyzed. He didn't even try to do that thing in his whole life, which he desperately wants to do from inside, just because he might get failed. And as a result, this path leads to guaranteed failure. Second is the path of action without thinking, also called the path of greed. Ultimately, that ends up as the path of fear. Because when someone gets brutally failed in something, a high amount of negativity gets stored into him for a lifetime. And finally, the fear of failure stops him from trying any new thing in the rest of his life. So this path also leads to guaranteed failure. In between these two paths, there is another simple path leading towards the guaranteed success, on which Chandler is going to work. While Joey and Ross are thinking like that, Chandler is thinking in a different way. He says, "Okay, I know it's not that easy, but it's not also that tough. I mean, I can do that also if I learn first." So he goes to the people who are already swimming in that pool and asks to them that how they have learned it. They tell him, although they are now swimming into the deep water, but at first they have started from learning into the shallow water. So Chandler starts learning by practicing into the shallow water first. Is there any risk for him into the shallow water? No, because there his feet are on the ground. Gradually he learns how to swim. After that also, he does not jump into the deep water instantly. He goes into the little deeper from the shallow water, so that if by chance he fails to swim, he can hold something and save himself. After practicing there for a long time, finally when he becomes a master in swimming, then he dives into the deep water. Because now he knows very well how to swim, whether if he has to swim with the flow or against the flow. This is the third way, thinking with proper action, also called the path of learning. That leads to guaranteed success. Now this was an imaginary example, because nobody jumps into the water without learning how to swim at first. Hey, come on, Joey is not that much stupid. So now let's relate it with a practical real life example. Let me ask you one question. Do you have any desire to build up your own business someday? If yes, then let me tell you a bitter truth. Based upon thousands of researches and experiments, this data is coming out that there is a 90% chance that you are going to fail into it. Because people who have desire to build up their own business, 50% of them never ever try to do so in their whole life, even at least once, just because of the fear of failure. They choose to walk into the first path, that is the path of fear. 80% of the remaining 50% people fail because without learning that what is business, how to do it, they start their own business. Without focusing on the learning, just by focusing on the earning, they invest a huge amount of money in a business and fail miserably. They forget about the fact that at first we have to practice into the shallow water in a small level. It is like you don't know how to play chess and you are going to challenge a grandmaster without even knowing how the queen moves or how the knight moves. In case of sports, we always remember the right path, that is learning. Because this is the only way how we have learned to play any sports. But when it comes to real life situation, we forget all that things. Just get rich quick. We have to change this mentality. We have to fix our focus on learning instead of earning. Because learning is always in the present moment and earning is always in the future. which in fact we cannot control. So if you want to walk into a path that guaranteed leads to success, then always choose the path of learning, because it is the one and only such path. There are two other paths also, one the path of fear and another the path of greed. But remember, they ultimately lead to guaranteed failure. Finally, the choice is yours. I have learned these things from Sandeep Maheshwari's Guaranteed Success session, and I am sharing this in English language in a summarized manner to join his mission in helping others who need it the most. If you find it useful and truly appreciate our work, then a little request to you. Please share this video and help us by joining with us clicking on the subscribe button. Next video is on the next week. Thanks for watching. It's easy.